Football Scoop reported late last night, and when by I mean late, I mean it was like 10:30. I literally was laying in bed when this happened. But Football Scoop reported that LSU is going to be bringing in Grambling special team coordinator Aman Anand to their staff as an analyst. Or on their staff. They didn't say an analyst. Let me back that up. But Aman, let's walk through who he is. So Football Scoop is reporting this. So he is a special teams coordinator at Grambling. He's been at big stops in big places before he was the special teams coordinator at Grambling. In the FCS ranks, Grambling State was top 25 in special teams unit. They led the SWAC multiple times and in multiple categories in special teams. Also, he has also was also a running backs coach at Texas Southern, where his group led the SWAC and led the FCS in rushing. Also, he had a number one running back in the FCS when it came to rushing yards. Also, he's been at Baylor and Penn State. And at Penn State, Aman's unit on special teams led the country in block punts. So there's a couple of things that we need to dive into here. Let's get to LSU and why this hire is good and why I think it's good. Number one, Bob Diaco was over special teams for LSU. So when we would go out to practice, whether it be spring, whether it be fall, whenever it was, when we would get out there, LSU would be going through in the early parts of practice special teams drills. It kind of started off practice to get loose through special teams. Bob Diaco was the main guy running those. Every tackling drill on special teams, punt return, kick return, and even field goal. Bob Diaco was over it. Bob Diaco was not an on-field coach. He was an analyst. And Diaco is now going to be the linebackers coach for Bill Belichick at North Carolina. So the vacancy of having a special teams guy is there. Aman Anand is somebody that I did not know before yesterday, but digging into him today, everywhere he's gone, tons of people have been raving about this guy and a lot of things that he has been doing. A big-time up-and-comer and what he's done at big institutions, and then going into the FCS level at Grambling, having a top 25 special teams unit, and then when he was at Penn State, when they led the country in block kicks. I do like that you, even though it's not on field, are bringing somebody that has been a coordinator and has been in other places where their main focus has been special teams. Bob Diaco was not a special teams guy. Slay Nagel was not a special teams guy. Even though we put that title on him and even though we wanted to give him that mantra, guys, at no point in time that I was at practice did I see Slay Nagel a year ago running special teams. It was Bob Diaco. So now let's see if this goes through. This isn't finalized yet, but if this does get finalized, and we're going based off of Football Scoop's report here, I do think that it's really interesting. We talked about this last year with Bob Diaco when he did not get a position coach job at LSU, that you're going to utilize Bob Diaco as a hidden on-the-field coach now that the rule has changed, that analysts can coach on the field. Now, we've been talking about this for weeks, and I've kind of been preparing you for this for weeks about what I think LSU was going to do. You're going to steal one here when it comes to a position coach. The reason you're going to steal one is because you're not officially on field going to have a special teams coordinator, but you're going to have an analyst. And guys, during practice, he can coach. And if we're just being honest, and if we're being point blank and being brutally honest, analysts were coaching during games too, and they always are. They're on the sidelines on every institution and at every place in the country, headsets on, talking to players, over on the whiteboard. I think we would be getting lost in a title of on-field, off-field of what they're doing by saying that Aman Anand would be an analyst. The biggest thing that stood out to me from the LSU side of things was, now that Bob has left, what are you going to do? And I think Brian Kelly did the best thing that he should have done and could have done, and quite frankly, he should have done a long time ago. Since Polian left, after the 2022 season, you had not had anybody that was really officially a part of special teams. I know that there are guys and in other places that they had the special teams labeled. They weren't special teams guys. This guy's been there and done that. Now, I also think it's interesting that he has also been a running backs coach, which I'm going to get to in just a minute too. What's he going to do as an analyst when he's not coaching special teams? Or is he just going to be doing special teams? I do not know. But Anand has been in a lot of big places. Baylor, Penn State, was at Grambling, and they had a top 25 unit. They led multiple categories and statistical categories on special teams. Guys, you need it. Because quite frankly, you need somebody that knows what the hell that they're doing. Now, let's see how this pans out. I do not know how this is going to pan out. I mean, this is a big role. You're going from an analyst at Penn State, an analyst at Baylor, a special teams coordinator at Grambling State, and then he was the special teams coordinator and running backs coach at Texas Southern. But everywhere he's gone, he's been a part of special teams. I think that that's a big deal. Everywhere he's gone, it's been a part of special teams. I think Aman Anand could be one of those guys that you find as a special gem. Here's the big thing about this that I'm really interested in. Excuse me. He's got a lot of players to work with at LSU when it comes to special teams. We saw Aaron Anderson take a kick return to the house this year. We saw Xavier Thomas be very explosive and take one to the house this year. Barry Brown, the explosive wide receiver that comes to LSU now from Kentucky, guys, he broke an SEC record when it comes to kick and punt returns. You've had a top 25 unit everywhere he's been, and everywhere he's been an analyst, and everywhere he's been a coordinator. Now you come into a situation where you're at LSU and that they need your help desperately, but it's not as if in the return game that you do not have weapons. Because you do have weapons. You have three guys that you feel pretty confidently that given the right scheme, schematic, and situation, that they can take one to the house. We've seen Barry Brown do it, Aaron Anderson, and Xavier Thomas do it. The last two games that LSU has played, in both of them, you have a kick return for a touchdown. I like the move. I like that you're stealing a position coach move. I like that you're bringing someone that's been a part of special teams his entire career. I like that not only that, you have a multitude of weapons. A multitude of weapons that you can utilize and use for certain situations. Hey, who is the best fielder? If they're trying to pin us down into the 10, 5-yard line, who do I know is going to catch the football and get us and has the most awareness to get us in the right situation? Who is just our best overall return guy? Is it Barry Brown? Is it Aaron Anderson? Is it Xavier Thomas? I don't know. Now you have somebody whose real job it is to take over that. And I'm going to tell you, Bob Diaco wasn't doing that. He was not doing that. As much as I like Bob Diaco, and I have talked to players that were on that team and how much that they love Bob Diaco, I really do not believe that you had somebody that really put all of their focus in on special teams. Guys, it's a third of football. I remember the Texas A&M game. I remember the Florida game. I remember the Alabama game. I remember so many times last year where you sucked. And quite frankly, you had some big moments on special teams this year. You also had some really shitty ones. Now, you went and got a punter out of the transfer portal. Guys, you've sucked punting the football. I hope Aman Anand can come in here and really shake things up on special teams. Guys, I said this last night with Carter, and I'm going to repeat it again. And again, y'all are going to continue to be mad at me about this, but it's just the truth. Teams that do the little things well, teams that are really good defensively, play special teams really good, that can have top 25 units. Ohio State and Notre Dame were in the top 5, just throwing that out there. It's the simple things that can win you football games. Look, I asked some people that cover Penn State for for Believe, and they told me that year that he was at Penn State. I mean, it was crazy how many kicks they blocked too. It's not just in the return game that they've been very fascinating. So it's going to be interesting. Another thing about Aman Anand that I'm interested to see. Are you going to do anything with him at running back? I doubt it, but a lot of these analysts, when you're not doing special teams, don't just sit there and go hang out with the kickers the whole time. They're going to be doing other things. They're not going to be with the long snappers and the kickers the entire practice. He has the experience at running back, and who better to get a tutelage under than it being Frank Wilson? I think you have an opportunity here. I think it's a unique hire. Quite frankly, it feels like a Frank Wilson, Brian Kelly coming together hire. Somebody that's in the state, somebody that's had a top unit, somebody that Frank can maybe lean on, that's an on-field coach. I'm interested, and me just saying that, it's not sourcing. It's just strictly opinion about that. But it's got that feel to it. I could be totally wrong there, and maybe I am. But just on the surface of looking at it, it's what it feels like. The other thing and the last thing that I want to touch on here before we talk about some other things surrounding LSU football-wise. I think that there's a shift at LSU right now when it comes to on and off field positions. The roles of Nick Brissett, Jacoby Stevens, and others. Guys, that money that you're spending for people like that, you're going to go actually get people that have been coaching, not guys that are pretending. And I hate to say that about former Tigers, but it's the truth. You don't need somebody over high school relations. Quite frankly, you don't. No high school head coach in the state of Louisiana is picking up the phone calling Nick Brissett or whoever would have been in that position. They're picking up the phone when they need something and they're calling Frank Wilson, and that's just the truth. That's the stone cold truth. When they need something, they're going to Frank. If they need something, they're going to somebody that they have a connection to. They're not going to Nick Brissett. They're just not. So now that analysts can be on the field and during practices and coach, and quite frankly, let's call it what it is, now that we've seen them during games constantly coaching players, it makes logical sense to go out and get a special teams coordinator. You don't have to make them on field, but you go and get them. It also reverts me to this. That means your tight ends coach is probably not going to do anything involving special teams. And I'm completely okay with that. I'm completely okay with that. I would expect a move to be made sooner rather than later when it comes to that. I've been saying that since Monday, but I mean, things need to be finalized. You know where I sit at tight end, but I think that the sport is changing, especially from a coaching staff perspective. I know that there are other factors involved, like revenue sharing and other things that you got to cut fat and trim fat. But if I'm going to spend money, and if I'm going to spend money on coaches or administration or personnel, why not get him on the field? Guys, you cannot have enough people that know what they're doing X's and O's wise. You can't have enough coordinators. You can't have enough people that just know the game of football, that really could dial it up and know what it is to be a coach. So we'll see if this Aman Anand thing is going to be finalized. Again, I keep wanting to call him Pro Football Focus. But Football Scoop announced it literally as your boy was laying in bed last night. So we'll see. In reference to staff, let me say this too. I do not believe that you're remotely close to being done with analysts. here does come some sourcing. I think LSU continues. I'm not even going to say think. LSU does continue to have conversations, interviews with coaches around the country. I do think it's going to be interesting that if there are some people that are out there that may even be big name, that could find their way to LSU, and let's see if LSU can land a couple. I'm hiring 3 or 4 more. I'm hiring 2 for offense, 2 for defense, and I am bringing in a tight ends coach. It's what I would do. But I do know that conversations at minimum are happening with people in the administration and on the coaching staff for potential analyst roles. That I can confirm. But what I do think is going to be interesting to see is where they pull the trigger on hiring some of these analysts, and what do you do at tight end?